Okay. Let's keep learning for the safety of Klal Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael. Alright, Shvuyim, the people trapped, Chayalim. Tav Nun Gimel. Bet. Okay, actually I just want to point out, just to clarify, so we did learn yesterday that Kitnios is Batel Barov, does not have to be, right, we're talking for Ashkenazim obviously. Kitnios is Batel Barov, does not have to be Batel Bashishim. But there is a Machlokas Achronim, I saw in Dirshu, Ayin Sham or wherever, that if the Kitnios is given a flavor, if it's a Ta'am, so then it's a Machlokas if it's Asr B'di'evet or not, if you're allowed to eat it or not. Because Kitnios is all a Chumrah, so the question is how far do you take it? And then we also pointed out that yes, you're allowed to use canola oil or any kind of oil from Kitnios for lighting your candles. You're allowed to own them and use them, but I think we would agree it's dangerous to leave that bottle lying around in the kitchen. Maybe you put some kind of cover, some kind of tape on it saying it's only for candle use or not human consumption, which is, we know some of the producers for food manufacturers do, just for parnasa reasons. Okay, Beis, Tav Nun Gimel, Beis. Ha'ose isa mina chitim umina ores. You want to make bread out of wheat, one of the grains. Right? And it's important to know what other grains are, because in particular, for example, I have a brother-in-law who will only make, has issues, whatever, people have autoimmune and stomach issues, so you need to know which ones might be okay. So he uses it makes it out of oats. And everyone has their own situations. Hose isa minachitum mina orez. It's a combination of one of the grains that works for matzah. It could become chametz. And you have it with rice flour. Okay? Im yesh ba ta'am dagan yotze ba'yedei chovato b'Pesach. It's 100% allowed to be a mixture. You just have to have the flavor, has to also have the flavor from one of the 5 mini dagan, and then it's your yotze 100%. Lechatchila. Gimel. Im lo beruachit yim achilat achbar ein bekach klum. Okay. Now, so sometimes, I don't think we usually have, well, I hope we don't have these issues nowadays, but it could be we do. If you know the chitim may have come in contact with, rats, mice, whatever, some kind of rodents, ein bekach klum, it's not a big deal, don't worry about it. I mean, let's hope there's no diseases, but as far as the Hilchos Pesach, ein bekach klum, a little bit of their saliva will not make any difference for making it a problem. Okay? And you do not, Mishnah Berurah points out, it's funny he writes b'di'evet because it's always b'di'evet. You never want the rats go in there. But anyways, the rats went there, they nibbled a little bit, and ein shishim, even if you don't have shishim of grain that never came in contact with these rats, you don't need shishim. It's okay if even all of the flour that you're using comes from grain that they nibbled on. Okay? We're not worried about it becoming chametz. Haga.
Think about not eating from something that a mouse ate from?
I don't know. Haga. Let me know later. Haga v'chein. Im lo beru mimenu oto dagan shetzamach. Alright. Now also, if you have grain that started to sprout, and that's also, you don't want to have, we can't use grain if all of it's sprouted, but if some of it is there, mihu tzarich lirot she'ein bo kol kach shelo yehi shishim kenegdo min haheter. So you want to make sure that you have shishim, I think, if grain sprouted, some of it sprouted and some of it didn't, as long as you have 60 times the amount that didn't sprout, it's okay, it's al batel, before Pesach, no problems.
Points out it's considered lost.
Right, because it's flour, we learned that before. So even the Ashkenazim, even the Ramah, don't worry about chozer v'ner during Pesach. Exactly.
But that's a machlokas in the Sharatzi.
Okay, fine. Well taken.
Kemach is actually yavish b'yavish.
All right. So we learned there is a discussion if it is yavish b'yavish, but that is the general psak for all Ashkenazim, and certainly for Sfardim. Okay, Dalid. Hachitim she'osim behem matzahs mitzvah. Now, you want to have matzah for the first night of Pesach, or the first 2 nights in Chutz La'aretz, or perhaps, again, it's a machlokas if you consider it matzah mitzvahs for the whole week. So anyway, we'll get there later. So then, any matzah that you want to be used for the mitzvah of matzah, tov l'shomran shelo yiplu aleim mayim misha'at p'tzira. So it's very important that we make sure there's no water that fell on it once the ktsira happens. Once it's reaped, then that's it. We have to make sure from there on there's no water comes in contact. Ulefachot, or at least, I don't know if you would use the word bediavad or not, but at least, at the very least, misha'at tchina. Certainly from the times when it starts the grinding process. So that's even more important, right? Different opinions and Rishonim, so this is where, okay. Ubish'at hadchak mutar likach kemach min hashuk. Now, when there's no choice, right? Obviously there's lechatchila. Now this is certainly bishat hadchak. There's no choice. There's a shortage. You ran out. Something happened. Whatever the situation is, and you have no choice. But you're allowed to even buy kemach from the shuk. Doesn't matter from the Jew, non-Jew. You take flour from the market, and it's okay.
Bleached flour? Standard flour is bleached.
So, I don't know. I'm not even sure what exactly is. Someone asked about bleach flour, so I'm not sure. But let me just. So bleach flour is washed. So for sure you can't use that. Now you have to. Now there is.
How fast they dry.
So bleach flour. Then if it's washed, you can't use it. Cases of bishat hadchak we'll leave for not for today.
Came up in the Soviet Union.
Right.
Years ago. Made matzah from flour and shit.
Okay. It's fine. So we'll leave that as a question for severe cases of bishat hadchak. Obviously, it depends how it's made and how it's processed. If you know that they put water on it, so then you can't just buy it from the shuk. At least that's the general halacha. Okay. I think we'll go to Hey. Ha'id me'asur liltot bein chitim ubein se'orim. Liltot means to put in water, or let it soak in water for a short time, or a long time, depends.
Boiling water, no?
No. I think that's called chalita. So here we're just talking about liltot, even cold water. The purpose is they used to often put the grains, the whole grains, the kernels, in water. I'm not sure for how long, but it would loosen the outer layer to remove we're going to learn about this soon, the husk or chaff, and maybe also for the bran, I'm not sure. But for whatever they wanted to remove, it helped. And then you're left with just the inside, the endosperm, whatever it's called, the endograin, just the inside parts that's where you get the most fine flour from. So, yeah, the Gaonim Aser, technically, it would be okay just to let it soak for a little bit and then take care of it. But it's unclear exactly, it came to problems and for how long and v'chulei. So therefore, already in the times of the Gaonim, they asered it, and we never even soak the kernels in water. And right, it doesn't matter any one of the grains. Okay, Vav. Sakim shenotnim mehem kemach kol hashana. Bags that they used to use, sacks, to store the grain all year long, the flour. Im rotzeli ten behem kemach. If you want to use it for kemach for Pesach, umechabsim tayafa, and you have to. So you want to wash it very well. Obviously, you have to launder the bags if you want to do this, to use it the same grain of flour that you want to use for Pesach. But that's not enough. Tzrichim lahatir kodem akivus kol hatfirot shebehem b'ktsavot. You want to use these bags, it's not enough just to throw it in the laundry. You have to first Alright, so it's not practical, but you have to first undo all the stitching, any place where the grain can get inside, and all of the edges completely unstitch it, and so that's basically a solid sheet, a flat sheet. O imheim metulaim. Okay, or if it's what was that? Patched, exactly. Any of the patches you also have to remove. Zayin. Now, when you bring bags that have kemach from the Orach, from the mills, asur lanicham al gabei behema she'en ukaf or av tachat hasak. So now, this is another thing. When you want to travel with them, so then it's a problem to put them straight onto animals, donkeys' backs or the horses, wherever you want to travel. You can't put them directly on, okay? Right? They're in the bags. It's 100% kosher Pesach flour. And you washed it, you shomer it, you guarded it from the time of the Ketzira. Still, you have to also worry about transportation, distribution. You have to worry about how you transport it. You can't just stick it straight onto their back. Couple reasons. One is it because it heats up the flour. And we're afraid that heat in the flour is now going to stay in there, and then when it comes to kneading it, it's going to ferment faster. And we all know that when we're, there's a time constraint when it comes to kneading it before you baking, and there's always going to be a few minutes of pausing, or we're worried about a few minutes of pausing, and if it pauses, we'll learn again more about this later. If you pause too much, that even though you're kneading it, if you pause, that's when it can rise. And we're afraid that if it's warm, it'll rise even faster. So just as a safeguard, it's asur. Another reason is also because of sweat from the animal, and it could be that the sweat of the animal also makes it ferment faster. Now, b'diavad, it's okay, but that's what, and then b'diavad, if it was traveled on it, you can use it, but we're going to see again later on, probably today shortly, that you just have to let it sit and relax to cool down. If the flour heats up, while it's heated, you can't knead it, but if you let it cool down, we're going to see this halacha soon, the general minhag is to wait at least 1 or 2 full days, in other words, at least 24 hours for it to cool down, and then it's okay.
If it actually did get wet from the perspiration, that the color would be more common, right?
So, I'll say, do a shelat shalom if you know that it got wet. Shelat chacham. Okay. But you don't have to worry about maybe it got wet. Okay, just let it cool down. Right? Also, the same issue. Sometimes we know flour travels in trucks. It can get very hot inside. You leave it in the sun. Same idea. Leave it in a cool place for 24 hours, and that avoids the problem. Okay, Haga. You don't stack up many of them, one on top of another. Again, just to avoid it getting very hot, so you don't, or to heat up, so we don't overpack them together. Mishnah Berurah says also not to sit on them. Okay, same concept. Chet. Noagim lenaker Orach Chaim. The minhag is we clean out the mills very, very well. Mishum dezimni natnu behem tevua letuta lesolet. Because sometimes those mills were used for flour that you would never use for Pesach. Either like bleached or if it has water or whatever the issue is, then that's why it's in, you want to make sure there's no mixture whatsoever. Now, b'diavad, b'shat adchak, if it wasn't done, as long as you make it before Pesach, it's not a problem. Right? Again, it's batel b'shishim, not an issue. B'diavad. Okay. Right. Okay. So, right? Even if you know you got flour mixed in with letuta that was rinsed, then b'diavad, it's okay as long as you bake it before Pesach. V'nohagim shekemach harishon shenitcha nachar. Nikor is also the minhag is that whenever you use a freshly cleaned mill for flour, even after you cleaned it completely, still, the first batch of flour we save and either for after the rahir. Shomri moto ad la'achar haregel, you're allowed to own it, but you just save it and only eat it after the regel, so you're not eating it during Pesach, or just eat it before Pesach. That's fine too. Okay. Let's go on. Haga. Ve'anshe ma'aser regilim lilich ba'atzmam al-makom Orach Chaim lirot heim ba'atzmam mitchinat kimcheim. And the minhag of anshe ma'aser is to go and check out the actual mills, the actual process of grinding the flour themselves, and make sure everything was 100% kosher and clean. 10. Tzarich litchon achitim yoma yomayim lifnei halisha. So here he says it's very important that when you grind the flour, so here's what we alluded to before, that whenever you grind the flour, the grinding process itself creates heat, friction. So therefore, you grind it, and then you let it sit for a full day or two before you do lisha. We're going to learn later on about mayim shalanu, our water. Not really, it means water that stayed overnight to cool down. But the same concept over here is by, I don't know, I haven't seen the expression of kemach shalanu, but here you do see you have to leave it over at least for a day or two, 24 hours. The Mishnah Berurah says, at the very minimum, if needed, overnight is good enough. I looked a little bit. I didn't see anything about nowadays. It's a new concept, the refrigerators and freezers. But perhaps bishat adchak, that can be helpful to reduce the 24 hours. But I would say that only bishat adchak. The minhag is to wait for sure at least 24 hours, or bishat adchak we said overnight. Okay. Mishnah Berurah points out sifting does not help at all. Even though you're sifting, you're waving it, you're letting the breeze, the cool air in the room, that doesn't help enough to cool it down. Okay, it's still room temperature, you still need to wait. V'im tachanu be'erev Pesach, and if you used this kind of flour that was freshly ground erev Pesach, yish omrim shasur lalush matzah bo bayom. So if you have freshly ground that you grounded it for to make matzah for Pesach night, and you wanted to do it on erev Pesach, and it's less than 24 hours, so some say you can't use it. If yishat kemach bishat china roteach umechamim hamayim, because the actual process of grinding it heats up, and then that heats up the water, and everything gets hotter. Ve'isa nocha lahachmitz, and it makes it much easier to ferment. If it was done, v'di'evid, you're allowed to use it. Just, if you're going to do that, again, just do it the day before, avoid the issue, to grind it the day before. But if you get stuck, and you are going to do it, just, Mishnah Berurah says, do it really quickly, be extra careful, make sure you're constantly kneading it, and, we're always very careful. But anyways. Taf nun dalid. Let's start Taf nun dalid. Be'eze matzah eina yotzei yedei chovato. Which matzah are you not yotzei with? Okay, so we know you have to have the 5 grains. That we covered. So now, within the 5 grains, there's still more to watch out for. Aleph. Ein yotzin lo bepat subin velo bepat mursan. So again, this we mentioned before, just mentioned it earlier today. With every kernel, with every wheat kernel, you have, I would say, let's divide it up into 3 layers. You have whatever on the inside kernel, the main part, I think they call it the endosperm, the main part, that's endogerm, whatever it is, that's the main part that we make our wheat flour from. That's what we grind down. There's a thin layer right outside that, the middle layer, that's what we call mursan or bran. Okay? And then the outer layer is harder and thicker, and that's called husk or chaff. So if your matzah is made 100% of husk or chaff, or the bran, you are not yotzei at all. The halacha says it has to be called lechem. And this, if it's bread that's only made from these items, you're not yotzei, and it's not even called, you not even have to do a frashas challah for it. Mishnah Berurah points it out from your idea. Okay, so that can't be used. Now, aval, la shuata isa basubin uva mursan shaba v'yotzei. But you are allowed to make dough, make matzah from the flour that includes bran and includes the husk from the, right? So if you have all three layers, really it's just, really the inside kernel and then two layers on the outside. But if you have flour that was, if the flour was made from all three and they were never separated, so first of all, you can use them all and they all count towards your kazayit. If they were separated out, the Mishnah Berurah points out, then, and you recombine them afterwards, so the mursan and the subin cannot be counted towards your kazayit, but it still doesn't ruin it, and you are yotzei for the mitzvah of matzah. And that's really the best way to do it, is if you have some of the bran mixed in. It's the best and lechatchila. Because that is lechem oni. Lechem oni, poor people, Mishnah Berurah writes this as well, that it's not the derech for poor people to overly sift it and have perfectly white processed flour and to make sure that they used to have bran in there. It was the rich people who had no bran. So he says it's actually, that's the derech of an oni. Okay. Right? And so that's what whole wheat flour is, by the way. Whole wheat flour is, has bran mixed in with the inside. So that would be lechatchila. Okay.
Unseparated, right? Whole wheat.
Whole wheat. That's what whole wheat is.
I got confused.
If I said whole bran, I meant to say whole wheat.
Whole wheat. Can there be the husk in there, the outer husk?
There could definitely be allowed to be in there, as long as it's mixed in with the...
Plus the bran. So the husk and the bran can both be in there.
Halachically, they're the same category, pretty much. I mean, the poor people used to eat it with the bran. I don't think they used to eat it with the shaf.
But it can't.
Yes, it could be. 100% it could be. Yeah, it even says, La shuat isa basubin uva mursan, with both. So it's 100% okay. V'yotze ba the matzah misolet nekia beyoter, v'ein omrim ein ze lechem oni. And you are allowed to use completely white, refined flour, only from the inside kernel at all, even if it has zero bran and zero saf, that you're also yotzei with that. And we don't say it's not lechem oni. Okay. Haga, v'tov lechatchila shalul as the matzah rechava yoter midai, and lechatchila we don't make matzah if it's too large, too wide. The have ka'ashisha, the Gemara says we have to use lechem oni. Pashas, it's just a din lechatchila midarabanan. It's brought down, but yevet it's okay. Anyways, so not to use pat ashisha, and again, it's a machloket what pat ashisha is in the Gemara, but here the Rama follows the opinion it just means a very large piece of bread. According to the Shulchan Aruch, it seems it's not even an issue, but the Rambam explains that shisha is something different. It has nothing to do with the size. It has to do with mixed in oil and milk, etc. Okay. Base. Let's just read base. Isat klavim. Dough that's made specifically for dogs, for animals, not for people. It's true it's made mainly for animals, but if this particular owner who's making this dough, this bread, also has in mind it's for his shepherds, his workers, for people, then you're also the yotzei for, even though the main purpose is for animals. But if you don't have in mind that it's for people, it's made mainly for animals, alright, you're less careful to get rid of the psolet, this type of dough, okay, and she'enzo meshumeret l'shem matzah. So the first reason that's given why you're not yotzei, the Shulchan Aruch says, and Haga kachem divrei Rambam. So it's really from the Rambam that one of the main reasons why you can't use isat klavim is because it's not intended to be eaten for the mitzvah, and so therefore it drops out of the category of meshumeret l'shem matzah, and you can't be yotzei with it at all. Any matzah or dough that's made not to be used for bread or for matzah it can't be used. Aval yesh omri matam mishum sheina kari lechem kol zman sheina roim ochlim mimenu v'chen nir ikar. And the Ramah says there's another reason, which is the main reason, even more than the Shulchan Aruch, that's what he writes. It's because it's not even considered bread. Any bread that's not made for human consumption, and it's a lower class of bread, and it's not meant to be eaten by people, it's not even considered bread. It's not considered a matzah to be yotze, and the bracha wouldn't even be during the year, or Pesach, it wouldn't even be the bracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz. All right.